For VOD listeners, we're pretty much set up. We're going to talk about drone regions today, and we're also going to talk about mind control. That's a little teaser. But first, we want to get looking at the Plex market, see what's going on there, and maybe some injectors, because something's on fire. Okay, let's move out this and this. Okay, voice level check. Can you guys talk? Can you guys say something?
Hello.
Good afternoon, all.
Yeah. Good. All right, just checking your levels. You're good. We have Saraf Patakane with us, and we also have Crackmac. Okay, gonna make another adjustment. And we'll get looking at this stuff. All right. Oh, Amar's here too. He's on mute. All right, and you're welcome to come into public voice. Actually, we're gonna move into streaming. Let's all move into streaming. And you're welcome to jump into public and then into streaming if you want to join us. There, okay, voice activity. Now I can stop messing around. Well, I was just looking at, wow, subscriptions already. Look at this. Wow, you guys are amazing. Like, I'm not even trying to be a streamer and, overhype, but that's great. Or was I looking at yesterday? The Wormhole show. No, thank you guys. Who is that? Bard Ghost and Viad. Thank you guys. Okay. Welcome to Tuesday's chill stream. This is the week after Easter. We've just had Talking at Stations on Sunday, and we had the Wormhole show. It's called A Whole Story, or The Whole Story. And that was yesterday, and that was really good. Exuki, who the Wormhole community knows pretty well, had interviewed some guys that were new to wormholes, and it was neat to see how they approach different levels, different classes of wormhole space, and what's good about them, what's not, what they like, and what they don't. I don't know about you guys if you watch that show, but if you don't, you should. Even if you don't fly in wormholes, it's really interesting to see just how different they play the game. All right, so we have skill extractors up. It's not what I wanted to look at. Let's look at Plex. The story of Plex. It's always interesting. For those of you that haven't been watching these shows, we'll just go back and do a quick review. You will notice that Plex over the summer, last summer, because I think this is, about June here, so it's about a year ago, was pretty much suppressed because they were having a lot of sales. And this is before CCP was sold to, what is it? Abyss. What is it? Pearl Abyss, the company that bought them, bought CCP. So there's some speculation from me that a lot of those sales were a way of generating a lot of income on paper or something. I don't know. But anyway, all summer long last year, sale. And so Plex was getting knocked down because people were buying it at a cheaper rate and selling it. And so there was a lot of supply, and supply meant that Plex was chasing after dollars. And so the dollars got less and less and less. Okay, so then that totally turned around because once Pearl Abyss bought CCP, the sales ended, and you didn't have really good holiday sales. You did have holiday sales, they just weren't that good. And that's led into all the way into February. of this year, and they had a Valentine's Day sale, and that sale wasn't that great, or it couldn't really take the steam off of Plex. So you could just see this long trend going up. I think you can see. Fantastic. I didn't turn on my. Excuse me while I try to fix my error here. I want you guys to see what I see. There we go. You know, when you use studio mode, you think you have something turned on, but you only have it prepared to be on. So you have to like send it over to publish mode. So what I'll do is I'll take it off studio mode. So what you see is what I see. And that way we're all on the same page. So what I was talking about earlier, you can see here is this long summer. And then the fall comes and the winter, and you see this nice steep climb. And then you have this really weird area up here, and that is recent history, because CCP had it had a sale, but it was a very strange sale, and there was some speculation, again by me, if there was a good coordination between the sales department and the community people, because people were already complaining about the price of Plex, and they created a sale that made Plex more valuable because it allowed you to buy account time at a discount. So they gave a sale on account time if you paid in Plex. And so what that did is it made demand for Plex in an already heated market even hotter. And so you can see this giant spike here where people went nuts to buy a bunch of Plex so that they could invest that into time at a discount. So their characters could play longer and et cetera, et cetera. You can see this big buying spike down here. And that's really what's happened. So after that, after every sale, you'll see a lull in prices. And that's what happened here. So people buy in advance of what they normally would buy. And so they don't need to buy for a while. So demand goes down. And the price chases the demand. Now, I'm not an economist, so don't take any of my advice. I'm trying to point things out, and I'm trying to get corrected by people who are smarter than me about these things. So I'm not going to say buy Plex now or not. I did buy it when it dipped down to 4.0. I just figured we're in new territory now. And the CSM used to say like, well, if Plex goes over $1.5 billion, it's going to hurt players, and that's going to be bad for the game. And so CCP won't let it get up above $1.5 billion, I think was the number before, somewhere around 3.5 million per Plex. And we find ourselves in a 4.2 to 4.5 territory when you have these bursts, and people were still buying it. And so you wonder if that advice was right. And so the CSM kind of revised it, or at least Aerith did on CSM. He said, I have a number. That number is about 2 billion ISK per month of game time. And again, so it went from 1.5 billion to 2 billion. And so I think there's a new reality to Plex. I don't know if it's going to fall like it did last year. But I also didn't think it was going to go up like it has this year. So
I can say it if you want to.
Yeah. Go ahead, Amar.
So basically, I'm on the subway, by the way, so I'm going to try to cut in and out of...
All right.
So sorry about that. But
right.
basically, at the moment, buy Plex, because it's going to go up in due time. We still have the effects of this last sale, which was the one you just mentioned, where we had 425 Plex in order to buy Omega accounts. We still see the effects of that one, so the Plex prices are actually quite low. And at the same time, buy skill injectors.
Yeah.
That's what we are looking at the market at the moment. And I think the CSM was completely way off, by the way.
Oh, yeah? What did they say, and what did you think?
Well, basically, we had a few I should say, Arif is a very, very good financial oligarch in EVE. He's rich as hell, and he's very capable, and he understands the game to probably a larger extent than I do. But he was one of the few vocal members of the CSM who basically said that too high Plex prices is going to have a bad effect on retention. But all of that was just speculation because one moment
Is that your stop?
there's going to be a few stops. That's the problem.
Awesome.
But no, I just had to go on to voice when we were talking about Plex and skill injectors and all that stuff because I find that so much entertaining. But anyway, no, there was I think it's true that if we do get to a point where Plex prices do become so high, we will have an irreversible effect to players who subscribe their accounts just through Plex. And that's going to have a very, very bad effect on retention. And unfortunately, the moment 22 kind of thing to it is that we won't know when that happens until it actually happens. And more so, when that happens, it's going to be too late, unfortunately. So I think we used to have that economist on CCP who said that we don't really care about the Plex prices themselves, but what we do care about is a quite consistent, steady increase of Plex prices. That's going to be most important.
Why do you think that people will leave, though?
Well, it
seems like a simple question.
It seems like one. Sorry, I have the lady speaking in the background now as well. But it's a very complex question because Plex prices are tied to so many different things. We also, another thing which makes it complete speculations on behalf of players is the fact that we don't have the actual numbers, the retention numbers, both in terms of how many people actually keep the account subscribed through Plex, as opposed to just buying a subscription. How many do both? How many alt accounts are used primarily through Plex, while they might have a main that is through a normal subscription? So it's whenever we speculate on this, it's just going to be pure speculation. So no one literally knows what that threshold is where you meet high enough Plex price where people will actually start unsubscribing the accounts they're using. And we don't know how many players that would be either. We know for a fact that people in Eastern Europe tend to have way more accounts that are subscribed through Plex, simply due to the fact that you don't have the same kind of well, if you compare a normal average wage in Romania or Ukraine or whatever, is way lower than if you look at the UK or Sweden or the US, for example. So EVE is actually quite expensive to play in Eastern European countries and Russia, for example, while we haven't had an increase on the subscription price in the US or the UK, etc., for very, very well ever, I think, even. So those kinds of players tend to Plex their accounts more. Just how many of them do it, we don't know. But there's absolutely a point where increased revenue from high Plex prices causing an what's the word for it? Incitement? No, in something like you. Hi.
Sorry, I didn't know if you were cutting in and out or something.
No, that's just me being stupid. I'm not a native English speaker, so sometimes I lose my words. But
that's all right.
Basically, the higher the Plex prices go, the more inclined people will be to buy Plex and sell it on the market for ISK. So for that reason, CCP benefits from having a high Plex price, because that's going to give them more revenue. You're going to have more people being inclined, having that incitament. I think that's the word, isn't it?
Incentives?
Incentives. There we
go. How's that? Let's try that.
Let's try that. They're going to have a high incentive to buy Plex in order to sell it on the market, because you're going to get more ISK from it. So that's one thing that CCP actually wants to accomplish, having more Plex sales, because that's going to give them a higher revenue. But on the downside of it, if the Plex prices go too high, you will lose players who will find it's too difficult to actually get the ISK in-game in order to buy those Plexes and have an Omega account. And those players are more likely then to just end their subscriptions and stop playing EVE. And if you have people stop playing EVE, that will mean... Sorry.
I love that. It makes me feel I'm on the subway with you.
Well, you are.
We are, right?
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. But no, but it means that you reach a point where there's going to be so many people potentially unsubscribing their accounts, which will mean there will be less content in space because you're going to have less people playing, which means that those players who were actually buying that Plex for real life money are less inclined to play the game because you have less players playing it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the balance, and no one knows where that threshold is. Like literally, I can guarantee you, CCP doesn't know where that threshold is.
But
So whenever you say, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a very common narrative of, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but this is the common wisdom, right? That some players won't be able to afford the game and can't play, and but I haven't seen any evidence of that. Oh, this just in real quick. CCP Peligro says 50 plus banned from EVE Online today for buying Plex from fraudsters. Sad affairs. The reckless site delivers goods bought with stolen cards and keeps your money when you get banned. Lose, lose. For you and CCP, please don't do it. All right. So I haven't heard.
Can we be bold and relate that to our new entities from another part of the world, or is that?
I don't know what connection you're trying to make, but if you want to make it, go ahead. We can. It's all speculation.
Okay, no, I will have to apologize in advance for doing this, but I don't think anyone has missed the fact that PIBC, which was the main corporation and alliance on Serenity, has recently moved over to Tranquility.
Yeah.
Which is okay. I did say I apologize in advance.
That's what Beer Hawk Man is saying too in chat. So you're not alone.
No, but it's a quite reasonable speculation, but it's still a very much speculation. But it also relates to both the injector prices and the Plex prices at the moment. So it's a hot topic in terms of EVE economics right now. I mean, everyone knows that Serenity had completely different rules than Tranquility had. If you haven't read the statement made by PIBC when they decided to move over, you should, because I think that statement is very sound. I really like the tone of it. They seem to have very good core values moving onto this server. But it's quite reasonable to expect that a few members who didn't quite catch the news of how things might work on Tranquility might have just missed that and went to what could be more traditional ways to get.
That's so funny because if you're thinking about it in terms of, hey, there's a new block coming in from China, I bet you on the other side of things, the scammers from EVE Online are saying, or from Tranquility, are saying like, oh, right, a whole new group to trick and and siphon money from. These guys have a different culture over there than here, the server culture.
What's worth mentioning as well, though, is that these players coming from Serenity are, in general, really, really experienced, and they really know the game. You can't forget the fact that PIBC managed to more or less take over the entire Serenity server. They won EVE on that server. So they are good, like really good players. They know the game, they know the mechanics. Sure, they haven't had the last 2 years of updates in terms of mechanic changes and all that stuff, but they definitely know the core mechanics, and they will be a very viable force if they actually do move over completely.
Well, if they make it, it looks like if what you were speculating is true, 50 of them got banned already, or maybe one guy with 50 accounts, who knows. Anyway, I think they put that warning out to say, don't follow in these footsteps, however many people there got banned.
Yeah. And I mean, I think CCP wants them to move over. This might sound weird considering that, is it Hilmar? No, who's the CEO?
Hilmar.
The guy, the CEO.
Hilmar.
The guy. But he said quite recently in various interviews and stuff that China is a new big market and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Which is true.
Will be the biggest in the next 2 years, he said.
Yep. And I think that's absolutely true as well. The problem that CCP has is that after they changed the partners in China, they literally shut down the servers. If you go to EVE Offline, which is a website, you can see the activity numbers for both both Tranquility and Serenity. I think it's run by Kribba, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, he put that up. Mm-hmm.
So what you can see from that website is that you can see the activity numbers being, I can't see it on my mobile phone at the moment, but I think it was close to between 12 or 18,000 active characters or accounts online at the same time. And then you had the partner switch. And the partner switch was necessary because Serenity had become insanely stagnant and it wasn't up to date. They needed a new partner in order to expand into that market. So I think they still made the right choice doing that. But following that, you can see, once again, sorry about my announcements in the background.
Oh, I like it. It
But
feels like I'm in the city.
But immediately following that, you can see that the activity levels go into literally zero.
Yeah.
So you had the
here.
server shut down, and when the servers came back up, you had an abysmal amount of people logging back onto those servers.
There's your clean slate, right? Like everybody's like, let's reset Eve. This is what happens when you reset Eve. Nobody comes back.
Not true, because what happened is when they came back from moving over to the new partner is Serenity was still the same. Like, it was still the same instance. So all the people that had the assets, all the people that had the infrastructure, that sort of stuff set up on Serenity still had it. It was just a transfer from one server farm to another. It also coincided with the conclusion of, if you watch Clarion, the things from like the Rooks and Kings, it actually coincided with basically the end of the PIBC versus the rest of Serenity war. So, people like TGA had, finally declared that they were leaving, and all the others. And that's where you see a massive swing. If you look at the Serenity numbers, you can actually see a big dip down from the 12,000 or so to 8,000 for about a couple of months before the shutdown. And that was the conclusion of the war. So when they did this 3-month period where, there was no Serenity, I think it was a case of people wanted to play Eve, and they just went, hey, we can VPN in and play Tranquility. There's already people on there, in like People Liberation Army, in Fraternity, in ENPL, in Ranger Regiment, that have got things set up. We can just go play with them on Tranquility. And then when Serenity came back, they went, I don't want to go back. I want to stay on Tranquility. And this is where PIBC sort of, they says, we won Serenity, we're going to stay on Serenity. Serenity came back, and it's like, okay, what's to do now? We're the only people still living on Serenity.
Is there anything that changed? We're off topic here, but we'll go with it. Is there anything that changed with China itself being even more lax about the internet, or what's going on? Considering what Russia's doing, right? Like, Russia wants to create some kind of a firewall so that it's only Russia in their own network, which is interesting.
So from what I've heard from people about this situation is everyone knows about the Great Firewall of China and the law. This is why Serenity exists in the first place, is that if you want to trade in China like CCP does to get, the money off the Chinese people, is you need to have a Chinese subsidiary control that interest. So CCP goes with like people like Tencent. If you wanted to like be Mercedes, you'll have a Chinese car firm that will run your Mercedes dealerships on behalf of Mercedes. So they're all badged up, they're all looking like Mercedes, but actually they're owned by, a Chinese company. This is where you get these problems of when you're trying to make a single instanced world like Tranquility is, everyone in the world can access Tranquility. That rule of China sort of makes that impossible in the law. So the only way you can actually access things like Tranquility and that sort of stuff is through a VPN. Technically, it's frowned upon in China, but it's those sorts of things that it's impossible to police. So it's people that VPN because they know how to do it. Everyone else, well, you're stuck with Serenity.
Okay, so it's still a VPN type culture to get into Tranquility. So people who don't VPN are on Serenity, this server here. It looks like it came down from a high of 18,000. So when it looks like, you see these giant falls, they look giant, but they're really not, because this 8,000 really comes down to 6,000, which comes down to 2,000. That's not that's not a major fall, but if you look at it percentage-wise, when there's not that many people playing on that server, that's a big deal. I do think that's what would happen if you did a server wipe, though. I honestly think that half the population wouldn't come back. And
Now, one thing worth noting is the fact, I'm not sure. I'm sorry. Was that Seraph speaking just now?
Yes.
yeah, it was Seraph. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I recognize your voice, which is both nice and creepy. But basically, when you what's worth noting is the fact that they didn't actually, like Sarah said, they didn't actually do a server wipe. The servers themselves in China haven't been reset, so you still have all of those assets. There is, to my understanding, there is going to be a reset on the Serenity server, but that's not for another 6 months at the very least, I believe. So
well, when the new people take over,
yeah. So what I saw happening was they shut down the servers in order to change the provider itself for the servers. You have that 3 month, was it 3 months? But you have that downtime at least where there were no servers, no one was playing. Basically, PIBC had already won the game on that server. So when people logged back on, there wasn't much to do on Serenity. And PIBC, having had the success they have, is a quite active, knowledgeable EVE player base that probably still wants to play EVE. And I think that's the motivation for them to move over to Tranquility, because I think if they were to wait 6 months to have the servers completely reset, that alliance would probably die out completely.
I agree. The other big thing is a lot of people point the fingers at the big firewall of China being the main problem for Chinese players to play on Tranquility. Actually, the big problem is being able to buy goods from other countries. So whereas me and you in other countries, we can, whip out our debit cards and they've got agreements with other countries, so we can put details into, I could put details into American sites, Matterall could put them into English sites or Denmark or whatever. China's very closed off in that aspect. So to be able to buy goods and services from another country, you actually need to apply for special sort of like debit cards effectively, or use prepaid cards to be able to use these services, which isn't accessible to the average Chinese person. There's still a lot of class-based systems in China, and to be able to go, hey, I've got a debit card that works around the world, is actually pretty high privilege, and that's putting a lot of a stop on everyone from Serenity coming over to Tranquility on a level playing field. This is where the problems with the Plex prices and injectors are coming in, because for those people that don't have access to these facilities, is the only way they can play on Tranquility as an Omega is through Plex. So with these massive influxes of players from Serenity, as we saw in the graph, you're talking 6, 7, 8,000 active accounts. If over 70% of them require Plex, you're talking 5,000 new accounts coming in that require Plex with the same amount of suppliers there has been for the past 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, I think that I made very strong predictions. I go to Talking Stations Discord, which I highly advise because there's usually very good discussions going on. But I made a strong prediction saying that Plex prices are going to go down due to the fact you're going to have so many new players coming onto the server, and they need to catch up. And skill injectors will go up for the very same reason. But one thing I overlooked, and I was completely wrong on that account, was what just Seraph mentioned, like how much more difficult it is for people to actually buy Plex the legal way, at least, on Tranquility.
Interesting. Yeah, because that currency, can't be spent on Plex, or do they track that? Or?
The Chinese banks don't allow transactions to foreign so the basic bank cards you can get in China don't allow you to do foreign transactions. They just flat out refuse them. That's what I've been told from sources. So if anyone from China can confirm that for me, please let me know. But that's what I've heard in the grapevine.
That's interesting. So in order to buy Plex, to buy injectors, to catch up, you need to do some kind of workaround in China, possibly. We don't know.
Yeah, same as like people using VPNs. Is the way I was told is loading up prepaid cards, and some of the services allow you to do online transactions with other countries. But again, it's dubious, and it's not something the average Joe can do over in China. It's still very heavily regulated.
CCP should allow Bitcoin to be used for Plex, huh?
Oh boy, oh boy.
All right, another topic.
That's a good point. But yeah, I mean, it's from what I understand, it is possible to do it, but it's quite complex to do it. And I mean, for me, when I try to buy Plex, I just log on to Eve and I do it actually in game, just from the Eden store. But the Chinese players, from what I understand, they can't do it that way. So it's more complex, but you can still do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we just had an announcement. The reason we had this little detour was an announcement from CCP Peligro, who's their security guy, banned 50 accounts for buying Plex in the wrong way. And we presume that it's Chinese players trying to build up themselves or himself to come over and when they migrate over to play on the Tranquility server, the Western server that we're all on.
Now, I will say this though: it is
All right, then we'll
unfair. Yeah, it is just to point out. It is unfair to tar and feather a whole,
Nobody's doing that.
subset of the community. There's a lot of suspicion. Like, there's a lot of talk about, this is PIBC coming in. It's gonna be rampant with bots. They're gonna do this. They're gonna do that. There's a lot of already preconceptions coming in to play for a lot of people, and it's hold fire. Let them prove themselves. They stated they're against it. Let them prove themselves before we start, tar and feathering.
Yeah, I know. It's just xenophobia or whatever. I don't know. Deal with it. You've dealt with everything else. There's been a lot of different types of people play this game, and they can deal with whatever the Chinese bring. I think it's exciting. The more people play EVE Online, the more full the world feels, and it's exciting to have them come over or not. And if they're farming, they're easier targets for you. So I don't know what the whining is about. You want grazers out there, so if these guys are going to graze, great. If they're going to fight, even better.
The grazers are your targets in your Stratioses and your solo T3Cs and that sort of stuff.
They're like plankton, right? If they're out there not defending themselves, they're just like plankton, and you're a whale, and you come over and you sweep them up, and then you eat, and then a killer whale attacks you and kills you.
That's such a weird situation. So are we saying that the Chinese are plankton now? And
yes.
But who's going to be the killer whale then? Is that like snuffed out or
no? Not snuffed. No, killer whale could be like Suetonia, or the Russian guy who's the worst player ever, who's like one of the best players ever.
Lucy.
Yeah. Is that Liu? Like worst player ever?
Yeah.
What?
Remarkable player.
Yeah, he's really good. No, but I just want to. That's the reason why I chose to apologize prematurely, because from a speculative point, it makes sense that it could very well be some of those guys coming over for China. But I also think it's a great thing to have these Chinese players coming onto the server, because we've had so many people for so long complaining about dwindling numbers on Tranquility, which is not true, by the way, because we've had consistent activity levels since 2015, worth noting. So EVE is not dying. EVE is actually quite prosperous, considering it's a niche game. I think the Chinese coming over, and the way, once again, if you haven't read the statement from PIBC, please do, because they seem to be great guys with very, very good intentions, saying that bygones be bygones, that they will adopt to the Tranquility way of playing the game, the culture, everything. They're even saying that if you want to try, having to overcome the language barrier, basically just learn English. I think they said that. So, I mean, I think they will be great additions to the game, but there's going to be a few obstacles in the way, obviously, because you have a completely different culture. So not everyone from China bots, obviously. Not everyone from Russia bots either. So, I mean, those are preconceptions that are quite stupid, in my opinion. But it's going to have an effect on the server, though, which brings us back to Plex prices and injectors.
Well, if they show up, right? I mean, it could be vapor news. Like, they may never show up.
Yeah, you're still on the fence though, aren't you? Like actually believing that they will move over.
Yeah, I'm on the fence.
Why is that? Why?
I don't know. I think it's just the skeptic in me. When I start to see like this overwhelming, without any evidence really, news that something's going to happen or whatever. I've just seen so many times in EVE, whether it's CCP or whether it's players, that there's a big push to do a thing and then that thing just never happens. It just vaporizes. And we've seen, a Chinese wave come over, and there was Fraternity, but I don't know how many. I really don't know how much of Fraternity is Chinese itself.
A good 50-60% of it is Chinese-based corps.
Okay, so about half. And they're not that big, but then again, they're not all of
10,000?
Yeah, they're the third biggest alliance now, aren't they? Third or fourth, at least.
Oh wow! Well, I haven't looked at them closely then. So
fourth.
Okay.
In terms of members, they've just surpassed Brave. They've got 11,300 actual members at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
At their current growth, they're on record to probably pass test by the end of the year and probably Horde by mid next year.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess I think of it in terms of I'll see it when I see it, and it doesn't matter beforehand. I think that's where I'm at with it.
I think what we have so far, when I looked at Dotlan, I think it was, earlier this morning, we had 450 characters in the new, the Army of Mangoes, I think, Army of Mango, the new alliance. So, I mean, it's nowhere close what you would probably expect from a potential 2,000 players moving on to Tranquility. But it's going to take time as well, of course. I mean, they are not likely to start off with having 4 accounts.
Yeah, they're up to 625 members as of a minute ago, so they are going to grow. The other thing is to calm your skepticism is the leader of PIBC over in Serenity. The reason why they're called mangoes is wherever the man says go, that's where you go. So if he has said, and if it is him that's saying it, that says go to Tranquility, they will go to Tranquility. It was like, they killed TGA, they did all that, and then it was a case of, oh, Star Chaser's still alive, go kill Star Chaser. And it was basically Rage, but worse, because you had all the TGA refugees, all of Star Chaser, all of Ranger Regiment refugees in this one wormhole, and PIBC did what Initiative did to Hard Knocks in Rage.
Hard Knocks, yeah. Well, we'll see. All right. Well, I hate to switch the topic on you. I just feel like this is another one that can go round and round for a long time. There's also the Brisk news, which is going to drop this week. So we'll be looking for that. Another one that can go round and round for a long time. But let's move on. Your last
could we
thoughts,
go back
and then we'll move on.
Plex?
Yeah. Why don't you go back
Plex
to
and
Plex?
injectors?
Yeah, go ahead. Plex.
No, I mean, I think we did cover Plex quite well.
I want to go to
Plex,
injectors.
Injectors are the interesting ones at the moment, but they are tied together as well. It's a weird sort of like symbiosis where you have injector prices are dependent on Plex prices due to the fact that you buy extractors from Plex prices, or Plex, I should say. But you also have another component in that, which is the Galaxy packs and the other kinds of packs you get from. You can buy them on Even Line Store. Mm-hmm. They give you like a few months of subscription, and you get some Plex and more significantly extractors and multiple pilot training certificates as well. But otherwise, extractors and multiple pilot training certificates are only attainable through Plex normally. You can actually buy the extractors, I think, from the website itself directly, but that's not very common. So those things tie together. So when you look at the prices of the injectors, those are going to be dependent on the prices on Plex. But you also have a delay, because it takes time to actually get those skill points for skill farms in order to actually start using the extractors to get skill injectors. So for that reason, I think you've covered that before, Matterall, when you did one of the shield shows, where you can see the two graphs they kind of follow each other, but skill injectors tend to lag maybe 3 or 4 weeks behind. One thing we do expect with I was wrong in saying that Plex prices would immediately drop due to Chinese players potentially moving over. I did say that skill injector prices would go up, and that's become true now. I think perimeter prices are still above 1 billion now for a large skill injector. If you go back 1 week, I think it's 1 week, they were at 950 million. So that's a very significant rise in skill injector prices quite recently. And the problem at the moment is that skill farms are still ineffective. You're not actually losing 200-300 million at the moment from doing a skill farm at current Plex prices, but you make about, I think last time I checked yesterday, it's probably changed by now. You made 70 million profit from doing 3 characters on one account doing skill farming.
Well, how much is it per character? Do you know?
It's hard to say because you're going to use Plex to omega your first character, and you're going to use the multiple pilot training certificates to do the other 2. So it really depends on how both of those are priced at the moment. But multiple pilot training certificates tend to follow the Plex prices. We had a large exception to that throughout the entire last year, and that was due to the sales we had on Galaxy packs. 50%, and even I think it was as much as 60% you could buy at one point discount on the Galaxy packs, which give you 2 multiple training certificates. So for that reason, I'm going to call them MPTCs going forward. The MPTCs were insanely undervalued. I know we had one prominent member of the community who owns a bit of structures in HiSec and tends to have bad relations with Test at the moment.
Just say a name.
I choose you.
I choose you.
He's he's one of the big ones. I think he stockpiled, I think it was like 600 MPTCs last year. He got them at about, he's going to have to correct me on this one, but I think it was close to 850 or something. And he made
800 was the figure he was chucking around, yes.
Yeah. He made a small fortune on those. So, but that was due to the reason that they were severely underpriced. But like you mentioned, CCP has stopped doing the sales. You can only buy 1 Galaxy pack per account. So a lot of people who would be willing to buy one of those have probably bought one by now. And there's no more extra incentive for new players to buy them because you don't have those sales going. So for that reason, we see the MPTCs being in line with what you would normally buy them for in terms of Plex on the market. So as it stands right now, skill farms are not very profitable, barely. I'm not sure if you guys have tried doing the actual skill farming stuff. It's quite tedious. It doesn't take that much effort, but it's still something you need to do. And if you have to do it for 70 million a month in profit, you're not going to do it. And that's been going on for at least 3 or 4 months now. And that's one of the core reasons why we've seen skill injectors going from around 790, I think, was the reasonable level, up to close to 1 billion. And speaking of ICSU, he was on the Talking Stations Discord just 2 months ago, and he kind of said out of nowhere, like, what's going to be the reaction from the community when we have skill injectors going for 1 billion apiece? And no one really paid attention to it. But that's literally what's been happening. And the Chinese moving over seems to have had an effect on that as well. It could just be speculation, like big financiers speculating, buying up stuff in the market. But if they do move over, you do have potentially 2,000 players trying to catch up in terms of skill points. And the only way to do that is to buy skill injectors.
I'm just trying to do the math at the moment for a triple account skill farm, and the numbers are coming up quite shocking.
It should be about 480 million.
Well, so far for the Plex and the MPTCs for the 3 character slots you've got, it's coming up at just to train them. I haven't done the instructors yet. Just to train them is 6.1 billion ISK for the month. Just for training, and I'm just about to do the extractors on top of it.
All right. Well, when you figure it out, let me know. I actually think that skill farming is still a thing. I believe CCP thinks that it's not good for the game. I believe they said that during the CSM minutes. And I don't think it's going away soon, because I think right now it's actually more lucrative than it was 6 months ago. And if you look 6 months ago, actually last summer was a really bad time to be. That's when I think a lot of people got out of the business. Let's go back to that price history. I think what you had is the you see the price just tanking. That's kind of following Plex on its way down during the summer sales. Let's just open it up to 1 year for both of these so we can compare. And actually, what I'll do is I'll knock off the quick mover, the 5-day mover, and we'll just look at the long-term trends, the 20-day mover. I'm making up my own terms, so remember, I'm not a financial analyst, but I play one on TV. So here's Plex, and you can see in last summer it was kind of down, going up and down with the sales. And here you see the large injectors coming down a lot slower, a lot more stable. And the weird thing is, if you go back even further, you can't see it because it won't show up. But Plex was actually down before injectors were. So I think with that, there was a situation where people were investing in the market, in being farmers for skill points, because it was lucrative at the time. The extractors necessary to get the skills were cheap because they're pegged to Plex directly. And so the market was following, you were getting a nice return on investment. But then that went away during the summer. And because the prices for injectors, you see this, just crashed. And so that meant like it wasn't worth your while. And a lot of people basically got out of the business at that point. There are couple big farms that closed. And then you see the injectors just start to skyrocket up. I don't know exactly why that is. I was looking at dates and what news was announced and stuff like that. And I had some hunches, but I haven't clarified anything. We're looking at the smoother trend line too, so there won't be anything super specific on this line. But it is following Plex on its way up, except Plex got superheated. Now, when I was doing the numbers back in that summer, and this is the reason I bring it up, I think the margin of how much if you were caught off, you invested a bunch of money, and then when you tried to sell, you couldn't sell, and your money was tied up, but you had to sell. In other words, you couldn't sit it and wait it out. You were selling at a loss at a certain point here. And I think I remember per character, it was like 200 million, even when it was a healthy market, which would have been about here. So 200 million wasn't really worth all the effort per character, I think. But now it's up to, I believe it's over 430 is when I calculated it, and that was about February. So I think
I've just ran the numbers for the ISK to Plex just to do the training and 6 injectors directly, which you can't buy technically.
Mm-hmm.
But the grand total that I can see is for the Plex and the NPCCs is 6.2 billion. For the 6 extractors, it's 2.8 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So that comes to a grand total of like 9.03 billion for a month's skill farm. And that's for 6 extractors.
No, but those numbers can't be true either. Sorry.
you dropped the salt. Okay.
Well, that's buying everything at Plex value as it is right now. So that's 500 Plex for the account plus 485 for the NPCs. Then the 672 Plex that it's equivalent to for the 6 extractors. Right. That's the ISK number.
But then you have a maximum of 3 characters generating, what is it, 2.5 injectors? Is that how much it is? Or
no, it's close to 4. It's 1,956,000, I think.
Okay.
Don't count me on that.
So how many injectors would you create with that?
Okay, so if it's 1.9 million, that's 9 injectors per account, not 6 that I'm going off.
Wow, per account. Okay, and so if those injectors are going for $1 billion each, let's just say,
you're about making
No. No. This is, I was sorry. I was.
Are you washing dishes? Do they have you working in the kitchen?
No. Okay, wait. I need to open a door. 1 moment.
That is hilarious. All right. Well, listen.
I tried opening it the wrong way as well. So once again. So basically, here's the countdown. So basically, what you get, the maximum you can get out of a skill farm for one character, that's using the correct implants, and you do the the attribute thing.
Yeah.
You redistribute your attributes.
Yeah.
You get 45 skill points per minute, I believe.
All
On
right,
one skill.
Skip to the end. How many per character?
Okay, yeah. That's going to be 1.969 something 56 million skill points per character. So you can roughly translate that to being 4 skill injectors per character per month. So that's going to be 12 injectors per month per account.
So it's 12 billion you get if you sell those injectors, and none of your characters keep the skill points, and it costs you 9 billion. So that's 3 billion per month. Per account that you do that.
Well, no, because you get 9 for 1 month, 12 for the next, because you don't get the round 2 for the month. So it's a little bit in between. You're probably looking at, if that's the math we're looking at, you're probably looking at about 2.6 billion on average.
Okay.
No, that's not true either. Oh. So let me put it this way. I did my calculations earlier today. Maybe it was yesterday. At that point, it was 70 million profit per account using 3 characters at current prices. If you go back just 3 or 4 days ago, before the skill injectors went up, you were looking at a negative value of losing between 200 to 300 million is per skill farming account. The skill injector prices at current Plex prices would need to go up to, I think it's close to 1 billion, 30 million in perimeter, worth noting, because you pay less in terms of broker fees.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be the breaking point where skill farms might be a valid thing to do again, basically. For skill farmers, like you have a few high-profile ones like Jintan, I believe, who does skill farming on a lot of accounts.
Yeah.
They tend to look long-term as well. But the problem is that skill farms haven't really consistently been profitable for at least 7 or 8 months. That's one of the reasons why I think I choose you. We mentioned him a few times, or I have. I think he stopped all of his skill farms as early as April last year. He hasn't been running them since then because it's not worth it.
Yeah.
So you're still going to have a huge undersupply going forward in terms of skill injectors because it just isn't worth it. You have a huge investment getting those characters to have at least 5 million skill points, 3 of them. You have to have the investment of putting in the initial costs for the MPTCs and all that stuff. So what we see going forward, we are going to see a continued undersupply of skill points and skill injectors. And on top of it, we might just have an additional 2,000 Chinese players going into Tranquility, and they will be looking to skill up quite quickly.
Okay, interesting. All right. We're going to wrap it up there and start talking with Killer B in just a second about what's going on in war zones. But first, I want to point out that if you want to look into, here's our sponsor, Eve Mogul, right? So evemogul.com. That's eve-mogul.com. You can check it out. They have a little SP farming calculator, and you can use that if you want to start to calculate farming SP yourself. And we'll say this: the advantage of using characters to farm is that you end up being able to pay for the account, so it ends up being a free account if you want to think of it that way. And you can use those characters for menial things like sino-alts and stuff like that. Again, it's not as easy as it sounds. It's a lot of busy work, but it does have extra benefits than just a little bit of an income. Also planetary interaction and stuff like that. Okay, so we'll leave it there. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I did want to point out last thing about injectors. If we zoom into this week, you can see the last few days that demand is a little bit down. So I was wondering am I in injectors? Yeah, it looked like a lot more than that before. Yeah, it is more than that. You see that these 3 going down? That is not a trend yet, but let's go back to a quick up and down.
It's worth noting that skill injectors have a natural course if you look at on a weekly basis.
Yes.
So the volume always goes down during the week, and then it pops up during the week.
all these tent poles is the weekends are the tent poles, and you can see it just kind of goes like that constantly. But you can see last week didn't have this downtrend. The week before that didn't have this downtrend. But what you have here is this downtrend. So I think the 1 billion per injector has spooked some people. I don't know. Okay, we're going to switch and talk a little bit about war now. We have Killer B with us. How's it going, Killer B?
Hey. Yeah, I'm doing okay.
Awesome. Last we talked to you, you had the tragedy of your car catching fire, which is crazy. So I hope you're better than last time.
Yeah, it's all good.
What's going on out there?
Well, we've got a couple of things, and I guess Progod. See, I just poked Progod because I told him I wanted him here to give his
All
POV
right.
from the
Progod.
test point of view, because I don't want to say anything wrong. So maybe we could Progod
There's
can start us
no
off.
specific point of views. There's only what's happening, and what's
Yeah,
true,
yeah,
and what's
yeah,
false.
that's good. But
And
if I were to
There's
say
only
what I
one
think
set of facts.
happened,
and it turns out
probably
Progod's
a
the
bit
one that knows them. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Good.
So, why don't you
Progod.
start us off, Progod?
Progod and Killer B. What's going on? And
I think we
silence.
want to cover FRT and then test first, because I think it's a far more interesting conflict.
What did we already talk about?
Nothing.
started.
Nothing
We
so
just
far.
started the topic.
Hey, can y'all cover other stuff first? Because I'm in the dead middle of something.
Yeah. Killer
It's fine.
B.
I can talk about drones first.
Yeah, talk about drones.
All right. So, goons have, well, it's not necessarily coming from goons in the first place, but basically they deployed some of their SIGs, which are basically groups, squads that like to do PvP outside of Delph. They've deployed some of them to strategic positions that allow them to hit drones quite effectively, which is obviously where NC owns 2 regions that we rent out, which were the Spire and Malpai. And they have one SIG in Uemon, which is low sec close to LXQ, which is one of the entries into, I don't know which region, but some drone region. And then there is the Space Violence, who are deployed in PF TAC and Venal, which is close to the entrance through MTO, which is in Paragon Falls, I think. I'm not very good on the drone region, on the different drone regions. To me, it's all just drones over there.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I can change that a bit soon. And NC has recently deployed into Malpai to deal with the smaller fleets that some of those Goon 6 did a bit quicker and a faster response, because in the past we always had to basically start moving from tribute, which was a bit tiresome or starting to get tiresome anyways. So we decided to move into drones, into a pretty nice location from which we can cover a lot of space, and we're sort of trying to keep the damage localized to, the Spire is pretty much already kind of burnt down already for the most part. But we're focusing on Malpai now, because Malpai is where the majority of our income came from. So we wanted to make sure that the stuff in Malpai stays safe. Obviously, it's very hard to work with bot at times, because they are a group of renters, and the organization and the infrastructure within bot is not necessarily very well set up for something like this. So it can be kind of hard to get stuff done at certain times, because the coordination is still a bit bad, but we're working on it. Obviously, we're now sort of getting everybody into channels and making sure that everybody has the right means of communications and so on. There hasn't been any major brawls that I'm aware of. I think this morning there was a fight between some people and us. Let me just check Zekiel. I'm pretty sure goons were involved as well. I think we lost some carriers to a couple of dreads. Obviously, the local guerrilla groups that are harassing our renters are mostly Unspoken Alliance and their friends. I don't know all those names. I just know Unspoken Alliance.
Laserhawks is the other one.
Yeah, see, laser, but they're still wormholers, right? Laserhawks are still wormholers, right? So they probably mostly roll out of the holes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're more like ambushers. Although they did.
Yeah, so they work with Unspoken, and then when they have a juicy target, they try to fight a hole, and then they drop with them.
Yeah, they do seem to have some systems, because they're on this map here, and that looks like it's the Spire. Let's see. I'll go over to.
Yeah, they probably have taken some IHUBs, I would assume. So there's definitely that possibility of them owning some systems over there now. The Spire is like, I've just started looking at the whole map in that area very recently, and whenever there was a time on the Spire, it was just incredibly hard and annoying to reach. Oh yeah, see the dreads we lost this morning, or the carriers rather, we actually lost to Laserhawks, and then Just the Game, Rainbow Knights, who are all working together in the Spire and drones to sort of harass the renters there.
Yeah.
So that's what happened this morning, but that wasn't really a major brawl.
Right. This is
as far as I can tell, there hasn't been any major brawls. Major.
Yeah. It hasn't really started, but it is heating up. You can see that Hawks are in yellow too, which is really bad because the exact same color is bot, and these are two enemies. So you can't really tell on the map what's going on very well unless you look closely. They do have a few systems, but this is in the Spire, and I believe in Malpace. I don't know if they're taking out. I think they're hitting Spire right now. Do I say it right? It's like a German?
It's fair to say that Spire is the focus of the attention at the moment. And as far as internally, we've decided to, at least me personally, I've decided to not care too much about stuff in the Spire because it's very hard to reach, especially the southern parts of Spire are very annoying to reach for us. And most of the time, it's very effective, right? Because you're looking at an alliance like NC, where when we just, like, if I ping for a fleet in a decent time zone, like 1800 EVE time, I ping for a fleet, I get 100 dudes, for example, pretty easily, even without announcement or posting an op. But all these sort of small groups we're fighting, they only form like 10, 15 man gangs, and they go around and harass different structures and iHubs and stuff in different systems. And then I look at it from a perspective where it's like, they're not going to fight me, obviously, and I don't blame them for it, because I wouldn't fight 100 or even 50 dudes with my 15 dudes either. So is it really worth me forming for it? Because I know that if I'm going to form up, I might be able to stop them from reinforcing the Astra house that they're shooting, or maybe I can stop them from entossing the iHub, but I'm definitely not going to get any content out of it. So I've sort of personally stopped worrying too much about that space because it's a bit out of our reach. And I'm very much a friend of consolidating our space and sort of trying to, not try to bite off too much, much more than we can chew.
Yeah.
And
So this is different combat for you because it's chasing little gangs that are roving around rather than colliding with another army.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's great for our younger FCs. We have a lot of we have a lot of younger FCs that have started to step up and do stuff in NC Dot. One of which was also responsible for that fleet this morning. And I think for them it's a really good kind of content, because if an FC forms an NC that is a bit less known, then he doesn't get that many people straight away, right? So if he forms, he maybe gets like 20, 30 people, and then they actually fight that. So the younger FCs tend to get some content out of it. They tend to get fights. Whereas if I or somebody else that is a sort of a more senior FC in NC Dot forms up, we tend to not get fights, right? So that's why I try to leave that kind of content to the newer FCs, and then we can basically focus on the strategic timers with people like me, which, for example, we've had one of yesterday. Although that wasn't drones related, that was test and FRT related. It was a big Fortizar timer yesterday.
Is there a Keepstar coming up in L7 in?
There is, as far as I know, a Keepstar in L7. Yes, it's not reinforced, as far as I know. I'm not sure if it is. If it is, then we'll obviously try to defend that at least. There's no major capital assets in the area, so that's why I'm pretty confident in our ability to be able to defend it. But yeah, we'll see. I'm not sure if it's reinforced. It might be. I'll have to check. There is one in that system, though. I know that.
Yeah. Well, okay.
So that's drones pretty much.
That's good. Yeah, it's kind of what we had gone over in a really bad way. I wish I had you on Sunday. So but I did go through talking about what had happened here and where it was at. And it does look like Spire is not something that will be vigorously defended by NC, but Melpace definitely will. And how are they?
Yeah, like I said, most of our income comes from Melpace, so that's definitely something we want to defend as much as we can. and the Spire is kind of dead in the water at the moment.
So what? Who else is down there with NC dot, or is it just NC dot?
No, it's just us. We've got NC deployed, obviously, with the jump gates, which are a very balanced tool of moving around space. We can call Horde, for example, and they can be in the area very quickly through a jump gate network that we've set up, sort of.
Mhm.
And PL is remained in tribute, so we basically got PL sitting. I don't know if they're actually in tribute or if they're just close to tribute, but we have PL somewhere in the tribute area, and then we've got Horde obviously in BWF and us in P3X in Malpay. So it's just us for the moment.
It is okay,
but it's enough as well. Like I feel like we're already too much for what we're facing. I have yet to get a proper fight out of in EU time zone out of this deployment, because so far, the PF goons, basically space violence, who stage and venal PF tech, they can form. They usually form like 50, 60 dudes in the evening. If they post an op, they can obviously do more. But usually they roam around through drones in the evenings with like 50, 60 dudes in jackdaws. And then you have UMON goons who, can also form like 100 maybe. And then you have Unspoken and stuff who form like 20 at most, at least what I've seen. And all those three combined, that would be enough to get me a proper fight, basically. But obviously there's three separate groups that aren't really coordinating that much.
Mhm.
So it's kind of hard for them to be able to fight us in a good time zone. So we'll have to see how we can maybe force some bigger fights to happen around here. I'm hoping that the L7 Keepstar will be resulting in some good content.
Have the Imperium who have shown up made any kind of a difference?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like I said, Unspoken and their friends are very much a guerrilla force. They can't really, if we're deciding to defend the timer, they
Mhm.
can't really contest us in a meaningful times. And obviously, if something comes out at like 500 or I don't know, like 1200 EVE time or something, and we, lots of these times we don't even know about. Like I said, coordination with bot is kind of hard sometimes because all these renter corps, they hold their own structures, so we don't really get any notifications. We don't really know if stuff gets reinforced, and then sometimes we miss timers as well. But yeah, like basically the Imperium is whenever the Imperium has been bat found, they make up the larger battle force in this, basically.
So that's probably when you'll get your fight.
Hopefully, yes.
Interesting. So it's, if these guys were only like 20 to 40 guys running around ravaging the place, it doesn't seem like, it seems like bot should have been able to handle it, but I guess they're not really set up for that sort of thing. Plus the constant harassment must wear them down.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that goes on with a group like this, and bot has really. I really admire how much some of these corporations in bot are willing to fight for their space. Technically speaking, and it's also something that goons make a lot of. They goons obviously started their own rental program in period basis. There was this great commercial that they made for it on Reddit like 2 weeks back or something. I actually loved that commercial because it was very simplistic, but it got the message across, and technically renters aren't responsible for defending the space. The idea behind renting out space is that they pay us to
Do what you're doing.
they just make their money. They care for their money making, and then we as the landlords are basically in charge of making sure that that space is safe, right?
Mhm.
So technically we didn't I don't think anyone should ever expect bot to defend anything, but they have tried really hard, and I think it's great that some of these corps are putting so much effort into it.
Yeah, it's kind of like they're the constables, the police, and you guys are like the army. And this reminds me of when bot, actually it wasn't Brothers of Tangra, it was Sons of Tangra, were in Fountain, and this would have been about 2009, 2010. And I was pretty new at the game, and I was talking to a guy about his corporation, and he was saying that he has some space in Fountain that he's rented. And I said, oh, that's PL territory, right? Do they go around policing things? And they're like, nah, PL just goes around fighting, deploying and fighting things. They leave all the policing work to Sons of Tangra. So this has been going on for over a decade.
Yeah.
And it's neat to see the layers of like defense and all the kind of social structures that exist here. Well, that'll be interesting. So we'll keep looking at that zone and see what's going on. But what is is there a bigger fight going on in the South with Fraternity?
I would say very much is at the moment. We've got the whole test versus FRT stuff going on. From my perspective, and I told Progod I would poke him when we're talking about his side of the space, so I'll do that.
I just did.
In a bit.
We'll see. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Basically,
there he
we've
is.
had this.
I guess.
There you go. We've had the pros from Progod. Progod, when did you post your thing? Your campaign update or something? What it was?
Oh, the little rah-rah speech.
Yeah, when you basically said, where how to set expectations and stuff. That was like a couple of weeks back, right? 2 or 3.
What do you mean? Was it mine or?
Yeah, it was your. No, I'm not talking about the Zapper one. I mean the one that basically started all of this with the FRT and you guys.
I think it means the 4th of April one. Yeah,
it was April 4th.
Okay, so that's like it's a couple of weeks back.
What was that? Just characterize what it was.
Sorry, I'm pulling it up because I don't even remember it.
Well, you don't have to define it.
We basically.
What was it like? Were you?
Well, I mean, like we ended the nip with Winter Coalition at one point when we saw them blowing up basically all of our enemies, and they moved in Elo Knight to run things with Black Legion. They were bringing down Horde and Skill Yourself fleets, and it was. I mean, we've been through this before. So basically, last year, when everyone invaded us, they used Fraternity space as a staging point. And so seeing Fraternity blew up all the same people that invaded us last year and inviting them to come be in their structures with dreadnoughts and all kinds of stuff like that, we were like, well, this looks like a repeat of last year. Let's go ahead and make put some pressure on them instead of waiting for them to get all their ducks in a row and invade us again.
Well, I think the reverse view was that you had allowed Russians to kind of. What happened first? Did the Russians came from...
what happened first is that XIX invited Red Alliance to come live with them, and because Red Alliance had just been kicked out of period basis, and the Red Alliance executor got in front of his guys when they were doing their move up and promised them a war with Fraternity. So like that was interesting, but Red Alliance they're recovering. I guess they're doing all right, but in the end of the day, they're not that big. So I guess that's not that big of a deal. But Fraternity's defense, that is a thing. That is definitely a reason to be wary, I guess.
So, but it seems like it's a accumulation of suspected intent, right? With Red Alliance or XIX.
It's really hard to be neutral entities next to each other that have recently fought a war and that are both trying to protect themselves. I mean, at least before the Sinojammer mechanics came into play, it was extremely risky to be next to someone with a large super fleet, because I don't think people realize how quickly you can be invaded. It's a 24-hour timer between shield and armor. So if someone hits it right, you've got maybe 36 hours to respond on any one of your extremely critical citadels, like a Sodio or a Keepstar, before they put it in a structure. So you don't have enough time to go like, hey, everyone else, please come help us with your super fleets for this armor timer. So people, a lot of the metagame that doesn't get discussed, down low is that it's you got to make sure that you can always defend your space. And when you've got two large super fleets near each other, which Fraternity and Skill, you have large super fleets and we have large super fleets, it can be really risky to just sit there and say, they're probably not going to invade. We shouldn't prepare at all.
Yeah, those are the ingredients plus the animosity that can lead to some quick action. Well, where is it at now? Like, I haven't kept up with it. I remember seeing it a few weeks ago when it was starting to go. you've declared war. Is that where?
Yeah, we declared war, and we did some opening moves the first weekend that went really well. The first weekend went really well for us, right up until the point where we were actually showing up for the iHub armor timer. The first 2 or 3 days were great. We were killing supers and titans. We were wiping fleets out. And then everyone showed up for the armor timer, iHub timer, and that was the one where I tried to jump my nightmare fleet through a gate and we got stuck in the jump tunnel. And then bombers decloaked and threw bombs at us, and we just sat there watching the bombs come in with nothing we could do. But yeah, after that it kind of settled in. We tried again the next week on another iHub timer, which was another 2,500 person battle, and we jumped like 100. They had the entire for every one of these battles, they have every system sino jammed, and because they're AUTZ timers, if you want to take the sino jammers down, you'd have to form up for an exceed. We can go into sino jammer mechanics, but you have to form up for a long time. And considering that before AUTZ is late USTZ and like 0700, 0800, it's really, it's really hard to ask people to form up for 6 to 8 hours from 0300 to 1200 Eve time. So, what we were doing is we were basically forming right before the timer. They had been formed for hours, and they've got every system sino jammed within Titan Bridge range of us. So we're having to fly by gate from our staging system with capitals all the way over, and it's just a pain in the dick. So, I mean, we can go more into sino jam mechanics later, but for that second timer, we even managed to get one of the jammers or find a system without a jammer and jump 150 capitals in and actually get everyone into the constellation. But by the time we did, it was 10% tie-dye. It only takes 4 minutes or 2 minutes plus 4 minutes to complete a defensive Entosis node, and Entosis nodes don't scale with tie-dye. So I think we got 2 jumps with our capital fleet, and then the timer was already won. Like, we barely even got into the constellation. There wasn't even an engagement that time. Like, all the fleets kind of skirted around each other. They tackled our capitals and killed some things on one gate, and then we broke our capitals out of tackle, warped them to ATAC C5, jumped them through the gate, and was like, oh, we killed some facts on the gate that got left, and then timer was done, and we jumped all the capitals out.
Yeah.
And so that was like the first week of conflict, and we kind of realized, shit, this is going to be much harder than we thought. And then we lost a lot of fights this last weekend. Probably the worst losing streak I've seen in a long time, where we just had basically each one of our FCs scrambled to react to some of the stuff Elo was doing, and Elo's really on his A game these days, and he was just outmaneuvering us pretty hard. So it's been a kind of a stalemate for the most part. We've won some fights early on. They've won some fights more recently, and now it's just kind of settling into a slog.
So Elo plus Fraternity, pretty fierce opponent.
Elo, pretty fierce opponent is what I would say.
Jeez, give nothing.
That's always been something that you can give Elo credit for, is that he's the kind of guy where it doesn't matter, and I don't mean this in any negative way towards FRT, but it doesn't matter what kind of people you give Elo to work with. He can make some really great stuff happen. He's probably the perfect shepherd, in the sense that he knows how to get people to do good
what
things.
he's got going for him now is that he's just playing the game a shit ton. Like, and Killa, you know this as an FC, like, skill matters and then setup matters. So if you have a lot of time to set things up, you can do a lot more than other people. And like I was, so this entire weekend we were tracking it. I think Elo FC'd literally every fraternity fleet all day across all time zones. I think on Saturday and Sunday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday combined, I saw him FC for like 24 hours total.
Yeah, it was
wasn't it Saturday where he did a 12-hour stint basically straight? Like he'd FC a fleet, go bring it back, and within 10 minutes he'd be out again with another.
Yeah, so when you've got one of the best FCs in the game, FCing every one of your fleets around the clock, you're going to do pretty well.
There's a whole lot of consistency there, right?
Well, you've got you've got an idea of what's going on at all times. You know where everyone's fleets are. You know where, Elo's been doing a really good job of poking where we're weakest because he's on all the time and he sees when we stand down. Then one of our FCs will sit down from lunch or something, see there's an Elo fleet out and try and scramble to deal with it. And that, you know, this weekend specifically, we got outmaneuvered a lot because of it, and we lost like 4 or 5 fleet.
Wow. Wow,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It was a bad losing streak. Yeah, it was rough.
And you've flown with Elo, right? When you were in Dot Bros together.
We've been playing together for 10 years, man.
And there's Elo in the chat.
Elo, you want to come in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's see. I'll just invite him in real quick. Take advantage. Maybe we should have you guys on Sunday and just go over all the stuff. I'm meaning to get caught up on all this stuff. Oh, he's at work. All right. Well, maybe Sunday. Anyway, so they're singing your praises, or I don't know if they're singing your praises, but they're admitting that you've put them on
Shown
the back
respect.
I would call that praises.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have to wrap it up because I have to go to work. But what do you think's going to happen in the next month?
Nothing. No one's gonna make any progress on anybody. These signer jammer mechanics are fucking stupid. We so last night before the timer we were going after, we sent a group to go start shooting a sign, and they shot it. They got there and they put it through shield, and then Fraternity pinged, and then as they were getting into armor, Fraternity finally showed up. But it takes 27 minutes to down these jammers. So we shot at the Sino jammer uncontested for 20 minutes before having to pull off, and we didn't get it down, which is unprecedented. If this was before in the old Sino jammer mechanics, we would have downed that jammer in 3 minutes, and we would be downing other jammers the entire time. Like, you just couldn't jam entire regions like this with essentially no risk. So every time we try and do something offensive, every single system within Titan bridge range of our staging system is Sino jammed. You literally can't even use a Titan. You just have to go by gate. And then, of course, you can cycle these jammers down and cycle them back up in 5 minutes. It used to be 30 minutes. Now it's 5 minutes. So, you know, you're taking gates. Any one of those gates, they could just cycle the jammer down and drop on you with everything they have, and then cycle it back up. And while you can shoot the Sino jammer to keep it from cycling up, you know, they can have 3 in system. You have to commit a fleet to shooting the jammer, plus commit a fleet where you were dropped. Like, it is. I don't think anyone's going to be able to do real offensive war against anybody for a long time. Like, we're struggling with it right now. I imagine if we were playing defense, whoever was attacking us would be struggling with it. It's just, I don't think anyone realizes how fucking terrible they are yet.
Well, they're easy to destroy, but they're also easy to replace. Is that right?
No, they're not easy to destroy. It takes longer to reinforce a Sino jammer than any other structure.
Oh.
Because you have to go through both to reinforce it. You have to go through both its shield and armor on the first reinforce.
I mean, that's just a generic. That's just a generic number. They just made it 27 minutes for some reason.
Wild. Okay. Well, we'll keep our eye on it. I was wondering why there weren't the big fights happening. There have been some sizable fights and some big.
Yeah, it's mostly been over
scored,
oracles tackled and things like that. There's been like 3 real battles over an objective. Mostly it's just oracles and things like that. It's been pretty mild, to be honest.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Thanks, ProGod, for coming by. Let's get you back on Sunday. Maybe we'll get Elo there. We can talk about what's going on. Awesome. Thanks, Killa B, Amar, and Sarah for coming by. And thank all of you for watching us today. We will see you Thursday again for another chill stream. But also, we didn't get to either of our... Well, we didn't get to the second topic, which was mind control. Crackmac, we'll see if we can do that Thursday if you're around.
Sure.
He's going to demonstrate or tell us about something that you can wear that actually tracks your mind patterns. And when you think of something, it can cause an action on the computer. Therefore, if you think of Jita, you could set autopilot and actually go to it. So seriously, mind control playing Eve. That's what we'll cover Thursday if we can. And then again, Thursday evening will be the update. So some news there. And then we'll see you Sunday. Thank you, guys.